All right, we are recording. I want to welcome and thank everyone for joining us for this first installment of our full body wellness after paralysis series. Our topic today is why matters. We'll be discussing the importance of movement, injury prevention, independence, and quality of life, all while living with paralysis. Couple of housekeeping notes before we get started. Your cameras are not going to be on for those of you joining us, but you will be able to see our panelists. We will have time for some question and answers at the end, so please feel free to utilize the chat feature and add any questions you have throughout the conversation. We'd definitely love to hear from you. Um, Finally, this Hope Talk is also going to be recorded. It's going to live on our YouTube channel, and we will make sure to share that link with you via email once we have it available. And I guess last but not least, a huge thank you to United Access. United Access is sponsoring this Hope Talk series. United Access can help guide you to the mobility equipment that meets your life goals and budget. And we want to play a short video right now to explain a little bit more about them. So please bear with me. All right. Thank you to United Access for the sponsorship. Um, so, right now, I want to take a second to have our panelists introduce themselves and share a little bit about themselves. Maybe we'll start with who is in my upper left right now, and that is Bobby Huntington. Bobby, go ahead. Tell us about
Yeah,
yourself.
absolutely. Thank you for having me. So my name is Bobby. I've been a physical therapist for 6 years. I've been at SCI FIT now for just over 3 years. And I've been in this activity-based rehab world, which is just basically a fancy term for focusing on recovery after injury rather than compensation. So I've been here at SCI for 3 years. I'm kind of working on merging the worlds of personal training and PT, just for that longer scope of practice and the longevity of exercise and wellness. So I think it fits well with the talk today. So that's why I'm here.
Right on. Thanks, Bobby. Next up, we have Anthony Giacinto. I got that last name right, I think. Anthony,
Yeah.
about
Hi,
yourself.
everyone. Yeah. Like Andy mentioned, my name is Anthony. I had a spinal cord injury when I was 19. Broke my C5 vertebrae, Asia B incomplete. I'm now 24, and I have been rehabbing pretty much the whole time post injury. I've worked with a lot of different personal trainers and PTs, Bobby being one of the best. And I've tried a lot of different devices and found a lot that works great for me and a lot that doesn't work great. And definitely seen a lot of the benefits of PT.
Right on. Thanks, Anthony. And a little bit about myself. I'm acting, I've got two hats on today. I'm moderator and panelist. My name is Andy Zimmer. I have a C6 spinal cord injury. I was injured in September of 2005, so going on 21 years now. I'm the spinal cord injury outreach representative for Help Hope Live. I'm pretty active in the adaptive sports world, especially wheelchair rugby. I'm a music lover. I'm a world traveler. I'm a cat dad, and all sorts of things. Um, so with that said, I think let's get into it, guys. We've got a couple of topics to hit here and some questions to guide our discussion, kind of starting off big picture here with why movement matters. I'd like to maybe start out asking you, Anthony, if you could share with us any ways that your relationship with movement has changed after your injury.
Yeah, I wouldn't say my relationship with movement has changed too much. I mean, even before my injury, I was very active. I was a swimmer. I played water polo. I was an avid mountain biker. So I always really liked to stay active and saw the benefits of movement. And while, I mean, obviously it looks completely different after injury, I still love to stay active and definitely see the benefits of staying active, even though it looks completely different.
I tend to agree with you. Interestingly enough, I was a swimmer and a water polo player growing up as well. And yeah, I've always been an active, athletic guy. It definitely hasn't changed in the years since my injury. I actually attended my first wheelchair rugby practice like a week or two after getting discharged from inpatient rehab. I still had my neck brace on. My mother was absolutely terrified the whole time. But I guess what I have found is like there's definitely a learning curve regarding like how to move or what to do to elicit a certain movement or outcome. I don't know if you found that, Anthony, like you need to like relearn how your body works and how it responds to things.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. I describe it as like being a toddler again. Like all of a sudden you have a completely new body that works differently. And yeah, I mean, I just remember like learning how to like shift my weight differently during transfers in order to like, be able to boost myself up higher or getting out of bed, learning to like, throw my legs out in a certain way. It was definitely a huge learning curve after injury.
Yep, I definitely can relate to all of that, agree with all of that. I think, it can definitely be challenging. I think, for me, it's like the best way to figure all of it out is by just going for it and not sacrificing experiences for comfort. Um, I kind of believe like a lot of things in life, experience can be the best teacher, and like there's no substitute for trying and failing. Um, yeah.
I totally agree. Yeah. Definitely just putting yourself out there is a great way to learn. I would also add to that, having great friends or family or support system, like to try these things with can definitely make it a lot easier, a lot more effective and just reduce anxiety of, putting yourself out there and trying new things.
I completely agree. I also think, like in like there's a mindset piece to it as well, I think. Like I think I found that like my approach to life or tasks or challenges post injury is much more like thoughtful or intentional than it was before my injury. I think I was like before I got hurt, I was very much a jump first and then ask how deep the water is type of guy. And to some extent, maybe I still am. I'm sure there's plenty of people who would say that I still am. But I think like moving through life with paralysis in a world that's not made for us, and trying to have like rewarding and active experiences definitely takes a certain amount of like thought and effort and planning that maybe I took for granted before my injury.
Yeah, I mean, I would again totally agree with you. I was definitely like I said, I was 19. I just went off to college for the first time. So it was definitely very spontaneous and loved, you know, being able to do things without planning, being able to jump in a car and drive. Yeah, like just being spontaneous. And yeah, well, that has completely changed. Like you said, there's a lot more planning that goes into it. I have found that the excitement can still be there, that feeling of spontaneity, like where we were just saying, like putting yourself out there and trying new things. Even though it's planned out, it still almost feels the same as like when I would do something spontaneously. Like there's still that excitement and almost like adrenaline to it sometimes. That I found is still a similar rewarding like feeling.
100% agree. 100% agree. You mentioned right off the bat that you were always kind of active before your injury and you've stayed active post injury. Are there things that surprised you kind of post injury as you continued to stay active? are there things that maybe surprised you or were unexpected?
Yeah, I mean, definitely something, I don't know if it's like a huge surprise, but something that has stood out to me is when I was first injured, and I was in the ICU and everything, and they're talking about rehab. I was prepared for the most grueling and horrible and experience that I could imagine, just putting myself in a situation that was just going to beat me up. And I mean, I loved it. Like it felt so great to be moving and active and pushing myself where I thought it was going to be a lot more grueling and maybe not feel as good as it did. It really, yeah, surprised me how great it felt. That seems to be a pretty common trend. I think with most people that I've met with spinal cord injuries, they love to push themselves and, do physical therapy and be as active as possible.
I totally agree. And I think, like the best way to stay active is to make a habit out of being active, right? And I really think that like activity and mindset are very much interconnected to each other. They're kind of loops that both feed back um, onto each other. And so I think one really maybe not balances out, but one really impacts the other. And I think I'm always constantly um, surprised. I guess I like to challenge myself, but I'm always surprised by how much more I'm capable of doing than maybe I had even thought. I'm sure you would agree. Like life doesn't really end after spinal cord injury. And I know for me, like being around other active people that are living high quality lives, like with spinal cord injuries, motivates me to stay active. But also maybe helps me to like believe during times when I have trouble seeing it, because sometimes you don't always have the best mindset.
Yeah, that was actually something else I was going to add is I have done some wheelchair rugby myself too. And I mean, talk about motivational group of people that make you feel good and make you want to push yourself and, do better. And that was definitely something that surprised me too when I first started playing wheelchair rugby and meeting people like this is how much other people can motivate you and how much your mindset really can affect what you can accomplish.
Yeah, I'm a huge believer in the importance of community, and I think like having a community of active individuals in your life is sometimes is just as important as like being active or the activities themselves, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
And then I also think that's a good thing what you said, Andy, about just how you can even surprise yourself what your body can do. Because I think I've heard a lot when you're first injured. Obviously, I'm not injured, so I don't know truly what that experience is like. But when you're first injured, going through the hospital system and everything, there's a lot of don't do this, be careful of this, pressure sore. There's all these scary words being thrown around that people after injury can really live a full, extensive life and take risks and do hard things and challenging things and push their bodies in incredible ways. So I think that's an important takeaway too that you mentioned that I just wanted to highlight a bit.
Yeah, I totally agree. I guess to that end, Bobby, like from a clinician or a physical therapist point of view, like what do you think what do you think is important, why is ongoing movement important beyond initial rehab, maybe even years post injury?
Sure. I think there's a couple of things that come to mind, I guess. Because at first, obviously, the initial rehab portion is necessary. But it's different goals than what you and Anthony now are talking about and dealing with on a day-to-day basis. Initially, it's the and getting home and all of those basic things. But it's really the time outside of rehab that you're going to learn your body, that you're going to figure out a way to transfer that I've never taught anybody that's going to be effective for you. So it's almost exploring your body that way with movement outside of the rehab world is where you're going to learn and be most effective. And then obviously, as rehab and injury progresses, something like aging with a spinal cord injury, I don't think is talked about enough of what does it look 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 50 years post injury. We don't have a lot of good information about that right now. It's getting better, which is great to see. But just how does movement play in a role of that? Because everybody, able-bodied or after injury, should be exercising and moving their body. So yes, it looks a little bit different, but just all of those benefits that we're going to talk about later is just going to help the quality of life. And that movement might be different for every person. It could be something intense like wheelchair basketball or rugby, or it could just be like hand cycling and doesn't have to be some crazy intense thing. It's just what works for that individual. Because that's where people are going to get the most benefits of just quality of life is outside of rehab. Because coming once or twice a week isn't going to be enough.
I agree. And I also think that, you were talking about aging with an injury. Like a spinal cord injury, like it's not a linear thing, right? You get hurt and you probably have a whole lot of needs initially. And as you work and you become more independent, that decreases. But then as you age with spinal cord injury, those needs change. What you need, maybe once you've been pushing a chair for 40 years or something like that, you need more care than you did for the middle chunk. And so it's not a linear progression.
Absolutely. And there's different joints to maintain. You have to think about shoulders a lot more now than prior to injury, things like that. That yeah, your set of priorities and objectives are going to change as you age with the injury too.
Yeah, I agree. I think that segues us nice into kind of our next topic, which is talking about injury prevention. Anthony, I know, both of us were kind of talking that we were active and athletes before we were injured, and we're still active post spinal cord injury. I guess, do you have thoughts on how staying active has helped you either prevent pain or injury or physical decline?
Yeah, I mean, there's two big points on that I want to touch on. The first being, I have pretty bad like spasms in my legs. I get really bad clonus and everything, and without staying active, without doing physical therapy, without doing stretching, they tend to get a lot worse. And when they get worse, that just leads to higher risk of falls, transfers not working out as well. So definitely staying active helps me, yeah, control my spasms, which helps just prevent injury, kind of in the long run. And then the other one is Bobby just kind of said it earlier, shoulder health. Like I said, I'm a C5, so I didn't have very strong triceps at first. But I was very determined to use a manual chair and get a manual chair and get myself where I wanted to go. I definitely didn't take the best care of my shoulders when I was first injured because I was kind of determined to get places. And I realized that after like a little while that this was going to end very badly. So I started working with a personal trainer just on a lot of upper body work to really strengthen my upper body and my shoulders. And since I started working with him, I have seen not only a gain in strength, but just less shoulder pain, more effective, like pushing and getting around in a more effective way that is preventing pain and future, problems.
Yeah, I think, there is, kind of, I do feel like if you don't use it, you lose it sometimes, or like athletes kind of like to say, I guess, like the best way to be ready is to stay ready. And maybe like the best way to prevent injuries is to stay in shape. But like you were saying, Anthony, like you also have to also work smart and realize that these our shoulders are what gets us around all the time, and so there's a smart way to stay in shape and to exercise and to be in shape to prolong the ability to either use a manual chair or do those transfers, um, and to avoid the types of things that sideline you.
Yeah, no, it's definitely like a fine line between, yeah, like not using it, losing it, or using it too much in a not great way that's just gonna mess you up later, like down the line.
I think we've probably all seen or interacted with people maybe who are living less active lifestyles than us, and observe them, observe our life. Do you have thoughts? I guess you mentioned shoulder health and things like that. Are there other issues like physical issues that you think that maybe you've managed to avoid because you keep moving, because you keep active?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest one that I've seen sideline people is pressure sores, and moving can totally help prevent that. I mean, a pressure sore will take you out, for a couple weeks to a month to a couple months. And being active is the best way to prevent that. I mean, moving around, being able to transfer to different surfaces, even when you're, pushing around and being active, the movement helps, do some weight shifts and prevent that. I think those are, sometimes the biggest fear for somebody with a spinal cord injury. And again, it's kind of a fine line. Like you don't want to let that completely stop you from living your life, but you also do need to be aware of it. And yeah, the best way to prevent it, I think, is movement.
I agree. I also think I know personally for me, I think maybe I'm maybe fortunate to not know what some of the issues I've avoided because of how I try to live. But I certainly think that, maybe things associated with fatigue or overexertion, by living an active lifestyle, you can kind of avoid, some of those issues too. I guess, Bobby, do you have any thoughts around that?
Yeah, I mean, I was just gonna chime in. I was waiting. Yeah, just I mean, honestly, just the whole term motion is lotion. I mean, the more movement you can through joints and our bodies are designed to be up and moving. So like after injury, standing frame, any kind of exercise is going to be better for bowel and bladder, heart, lungs, all of that is going to operate a lot better the more you move around, which is just going to extend your life as well in the long run.
Totally agree. Do you have any other you have any other thoughts on maybe like how strength, mobility, cardiovascular activity can help reduce either secondary injuries, long-term complications, anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, definitely like heart health, everything like that. The more you're able to get heart rate up, I know it's hard to some for some people to kind of feel heart rate elevate or blood pressure. But the more sitting up, standing up, moving is going to be better for the blood pressure regulation too. If it goes too low or it goes too high, that's going to be better in the long run for just stress on your vessels. The bone density aspect as well is just going to be better to prevent those breaks or stress fractures during every transfer and awkward positions that you're putting your body in. So from that aspect, yeah, I mean that's where I think the most important thing is to identify like how Anthony talked about what are kind of the primary risk factors, we'll call them. Like he talked about spasms. Some people, nerve pain's a debilitating thing that they're dealing with. And sometimes stretching or motion will really help with that nerve pain too, and that'll just increase your quality of life too. So just figuring out those item lists of what is most impacting your life, I think is a good place to start as well, whether it's nerve pain or spasms or bone density or heart health, and kind of addressing it that way.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I also think, I know for me, kind of going back to what I was saying about like trying and failing is the best teacher. You don't want to fail in a way that's going to injure yourself, but failing, is such a great teacher in I think preventing some of these injuries because if you can do enough different transfers or learn how to do a weird transfer or something like that, it can save you in so many situations where now, if I can do a high transfer, do a low transfer or whatever, well, now I'm avoiding trying something and completely failing and having to attempt like a floor transfer and just like shred my shoulder while I'm trying to do that.
Right. And working on some of those complex transfers with somebody to help give a little bit of insight. I mean, that's what me and Anthony were doing a whole bunch here of just figuring out because he's tall and has spasms of hey, he wants to get on the floor, how do we get back up kind of thing? Or if worst case, if he ends up on the floor, how do we get back up safely where he's not destroying his shoulders every single time? So yeah, just working with PT or a specialist with that as well, just to help optimize and be more efficient in movement. Because yeah, you're going to be transferring hundreds of times a day. Is there a way we can make that more efficient and save a joint or a twist or anything like that? I think is also important.
I think another good point, Andy, like we were saying, having a community of other active people is extremely useful. Somebody told me pretty early on in my injury, and I think it's one of the best things I've heard is don't reinvent the wheel. Um, we've all had some, bad tumbles, bad falls, bad transfers. sort of learn from other people and what they've done to prevent that can totally help you, like prevent you from getting in the same situation.
I agree. And I was thinking about you mentioned your spasticity a couple times, and I was thinking about that in relation to what we were just talking about. And I remember when I first got hurt, the thought maybe from the doctors and my mindset at the time was, oh, you got to get rid of these spasms. But the more I spoke to people who had been living with paralysis for a long time, the more I heard from a lot of these people was like, I actually like having some spasticity. I don't want to completely get rid of it. It helps with my muscle tone. It helps with my bone density. And sometimes for certain different things, whether it's a transfer or whatever, like I actually want to be able to use my spasm to, it's a value add. It's kind of a net benefit, as I'm transferring. Maybe it helps me, push through my legs as I'm pivoting, doing it or helping me balance or something like that. I don't know if you found that, Anthony.
Yeah, I mean, again, like what we were saying, where everybody, you got to relearn how to use your body in a completely different way. And everybody with spinal cord injury is a little bit different, and everybody will learn how to use their body in different ways and their spasms or, the little bit of movement that they might get back in their hand or their legs or something. It always amazes me, hearing my peers, fellow people with spinal cord injury, the crazy things that they can figure out how to do. Um, it's inspiring. It's fun to hear. It's just, yeah, I think it's great.
I think if nothing else, for like somebody who's kind of nerdy like me, I really like um I like the challenge. I think you mentioned that earlier. I think it also really forces you to be creative, which is something that that really speaks to me as well. I like that challenge to be able to find creative solutions to everyday problems.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it can be the most frustrating thing, and you're sitting there ripping your hair out, like, why can't I do this? But then when you do figure it out and you do get to think outside the box, it's also one of the most rewarding, like, feelings.
Yeah, I 100% agree, and I think that actually kind of also brings us, nicely into our third topic around kind of independence and quality of life, and talking about maybe how being active and physical activity has kind of helped to support your independence and enhanced your quality of life. Do you have specific thoughts around that, Anthony?
Yeah, I mean, that's actually kind of my life right now. I just maybe a month ago moved out of my parents' house and I'm living independently for the first time. And I would not be here without movement, without, you know, learning how to do these transfers, working with Bobby, in physical therapy for a while, without, getting the strength to be able to do the transfers that I need to do to live on my own. I This was my goal, when I first got injured 5 years ago, and I would not be in this situation without, like, there's nothing else to credit it towards besides, yeah, like physical therapy and exercise and movement and learning how to, yeah, work independently and everything.
Yeah, and I think we've talked a lot about kind of how things are connected, interconnected, with each other. I definitely think independence and quality of life are very much interconnected. I think most of us in the paralysis community, or just people in general, I think we all want to live independently, have the highest quality of life possible. Um, I think, from a wheelchair user's perspective, from a paralysis perspective, being active doesn't necessarily just mean like playing adaptive sports or being able to push your wheelchair around Disney World or something like that. I think it also means like being actively engaged in your life and all the things that we need to deal with on a day-to-day basis, like you were mentioning, Anthony. And it could be just becoming more independent on dressing or moving out of your house or managing bladder and bowel routines. Um, it means actively seeking out and doing anything that brings you joy and fulfillment and not finding reasons or excuses to not do something.
Yeah. And I mean, like, living independently doesn't just mean, yeah, being the strongest and being able to push your wheelchair as far as possible and having big muscles. I mean, one of the things that took me the longest to learn was how to put on a fitted sheet. And one of the hardest parts was being able to like lift up the mattress with one hand. Um, and that's a weird thing to try to, get strong enough for. And
And I'm sure you
so,
even figured out some things that you didn't even know were going to be tough until you moved out.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's just that's what I think it's important to do everything and try everything and work on every muscle and learn how to use your body in different ways because like Bobby was saying, you never know when something's going to surprise you that you need to be able to do and to have the strength or know-how or knowledge to be able to do it is really important.
Yeah, sometimes I you were talking about putting on a fitted sheet, and I was thinking back to, times in my life where it's sometimes like sometimes like the time that you have to figure that out is at like 3 o'clock in the morning when you suddenly wake up and you're looking down and you're like, well, I need to change these sheets. Crap, I guess I need to figure out how to put on a fitted sheet. And suddenly you're doing it at 3 o'clock in the morning. And I guess that's where, once again, the mindset piece comes in and, kind of, all the things we've been talking about, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's all connected. Mindset and, taking care of yourself mentally, taking care of yourself physically, it all connects. I mean, Bobby, you mentioned, how standing and everything can help, bowel and bladder. I've definitely found that to be the case. Diet fits in there too. It's all connected. And the more you can take care of yourself, as a whole person, just the better you're going to be and the higher quality life you're going to have, the more independent you're going to be.
Yeah. Do you have, and maybe both of you guys have thoughts around this. Do you guys have any advice that you would give to somebody with a spinal cord injury who wants to be more active? Maybe they don't know how, or they don't know what to do, or anything like that.
I would say just try everything and see what works for you. You can try different sports. You might like some of them, you might not. I know it can be sometimes scary and you got to work through the anxiety, but try going to the gym, see if that works for you. I, found I really liked going to a personal trainer and that really worked really well for me. I tried a couple different adaptive sports and some I liked, some I didn't. And like I was saying, everybody with a spinal cord injury is different. Everybody's body works differently. And I think the same with movement. What works for you will look different than what works for me, will look different than, the next person. So I say just try everything and see what sticks.
Yeah, I was basically gonna say something very similar. Because just the more you try, the more people you'll meet, the more community you'll have, and you'll hit it off with the community with whatever activity it is. And even if you're just getting out with that community, it doesn't have to be something super physically active, but in order to get to that coffee shop to hang out with a group of friends, you're going to be forced to be active to get up out of the house. So it doesn't even have to be some crazy intense sport either. It can be something simple, to just, again, to have that community, have the physical activity, and just increase the mental state.
I think you said the magic word for me, Bobby, is which is community. I think it's so important for everyone, but especially living with paralysis, is to find a community of people who, who you have that in common with. And I think, maybe some people are more resistant to that than others. Oh, I don't want to hang out with other people in wheelchairs and whatever. But, finding that community doesn't mean that 24/7, these are your only people. But these are people that have a very shared, unique experience with you. And whether it's getting involved with a peer group or going to an adaptive sport, practice or a demo or whatever, it doesn't mean that you have to be a Paralympian. Doesn't even mean that you have to be serious about it. But like finding that community of people who share that community with you and can share resources, can share different thoughts and things like that is so important uh, for, getting out and getting active and finding those opportunities.
And there's a lot of adaptive stuff online now too, in terms of workout classes and things like that, where if getting out of the house is the barrier, there's a lot of community to be had online. Obviously, we're doing it right now. So there's a lot of options for Zoom fitness classes and workout classes from your chair too.
Have you found, Bobby, have you found anything from all of your time working with people with paralysis outside of finding community? Have you found, you know, like certain things that people are doing in common that are maybe that if you look at, you know, groups of people and saying these are the most independent people, these are the people that are living the highest quality of lives, is there like a through line of things that a lot of these people are doing that you've seen working with multiple people over the years?
I would say the biggest thing that comes to mind with which Anthony kind of touched on, probably just consistency. And not even like every single day they're coming to our facility or anything like that. But it's not like when me and Anthony were working together, it's not like we were directly working on things in his house to live independently. We were just working on movement, strengthening, stability, and that translated to those functional things. So I think the people that stayed consistent with whatever movement that they found that worked for them and community worked for them, whether it's PT directly or personal training or wheelchair basketball, whatever that movement is, I think the more consistent that someone can be with an exercise routine, the better and more independent they can be.
Yeah, and that kind of that goes back to our like habits. You know, we talked a little bit about habits, and you know, like a habit can be good or bad, right? Like it's really easy if you're not doing anything to continue not doing anything. But, you know, once you start building good habits, you know, that's also kind of infectious.
Absolutely. And there's a good thing to be said about routines too, to some extent. I mean, getting in a standing frame every day, getting on an FES bike, getting on a hand cycle, whatever it may be, whatever the preferred mode is, to have a little bit of that routine built in is super beneficial.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I realized fairly early on in my injury, when I was going to wheelchair rugby and meeting these guys and talking to them, is yeah, a lot of them were living independently and everything. And it wasn't, oh, do you work out? It was, what's your workout routine? Like, what do you do? How consistent are you? So, I mean, yeah, all of that definitely applies.
Nice. Um, Well, that's kind of the a bunch of the pre-prepared stuff that I had. I do want to also mention as we're talking about working out and access to different ways to stay active through Help Hope Live. We actually we partnered with WOW, which is Wonders on Wheels. They offer fitness classes for individuals with a broad spectrum of disabilities, but chair-based fitness is one of the things that they do. We actually at Help Hope Live, we offer 4 free virtual fitness classes each month. So if you're a person out there that maybe is struggling to find your community to get active or wants to add something else to your day-to-day or your, you know, week-to-week routine to be more active, um, you know, come join us every week for Wonder on Wheels fitness classes and put some activity back in your life. Um, but I want to move on and try to spend the time that we have left answering some questions from our audience. We'll see if, you know, these are for more for you and me, Anthony, or more for Bobby. But I guess Bobby, just right off the bat, we've had a bunch of questions, uh, unsurprisingly, about the best way to balance kind of preserving shoulder function, shoulder health, and also working out and getting stronger. People are worried about maybe who have had injuries in the past, about re-injuring it, or other people, you know, not wanting to get that first injury so that that's the lingering problem. Do you have any advice on kind of that balance between working out, getting strong, and preserving shoulder health?
Yes. I mean, obviously, if you have access to a facility, that'd be the best way is to get physically examined and what your situation and what's going on. But in general, it's called the STOMP protocol, for people with spinal cord injury. That you should be able to just look it up online. It's STOMPS. It's just a home-based like shoulder rehab program that a lot of rehab facilities will give out like initially after injury. I don't know if either of you have ever heard of it, but it's basic light band work for like for the rotator cuff just to help preserve function and prevent injury.
Yeah,
That's usually what I just dish out real quick on the fly to people. But obviously, everyone's scenarios. If there's one takeaway from this message, everyone's situation's different. So without a full assessment and things like that, I usually direct people to the STOMPS protocol.
I haven't heard of that. I'll have to look up that one. But I know, for me, another thing too, I think it's really important. At least I can notice the difference in my shoulder health when I do range of motion stuff every day. And I kind of have, my own circuit that maybe takes me 10, 15 minutes. I mean, it's something that you can even do, if you're just sitting on a Zoom call or whatever, you can go through it. I think keeping that range of motion really good will help you that when you go into the gym and you're trying to lift or you're trying to push or something like that, you're not like getting to the end of your range when you're doing an exercise and stressing stuff out. So I've found huge difference between the times when I'm consistently doing my range of motion stuff versus when I'm not.
Absolutely, definitely. And I'll try to put a link to like the handout in there too. I mean, they're very basic, and if you're super active, they're gonna be like, oh, like I don't know about this. Obviously, you can adjust the resistance and things like that, but it's really just light resistant movement and mobility. Just like what you were talking about. It's nothing too crazy. It's pretty accessible and everything that you can do at home. Oh, someone just put it in. Perfect. I was working on finding the PDF as we were chatting.
Anthony, is there anything else? Is there anything else that you do to keep your shoulders strong but healthy?
Yeah, I mean, like I found, when I push my shoulders a little too much when I'm wheeling down the sidewalk for a little too long and my rotator cuff starts kind of aching. Just doing, yeah, like you were saying, range of motion, like using them how you should. I've always found working out, usually not crazy weights, light weights, and just doing proper exercises and moving your shoulders how you should in a healthy way really does help. Like my shoulders feel better when they're starting to hurt.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to modify too. I mean, there's plenty of times me and Anthony were doing something and he was like, oh, that's really bothering my shoulder. Sometimes you just have to adjust on the fly of knowing your body and what aggravates it. Or if it's a certain part of transfer that bothers you or whatever it may be, just adjusting that aspect.
I think that's a kind of an important point too, maybe that involves that should be highlighting is um, not not just having blinders on when you're doing something and being open to modifying something or changing it. If your body's telling you, to change, or if something's not working, I mean, there is, you don't want to give up on doing something. You want to push through and you want to persevere, but you also have to listen to your body or being open to changing or modifying or doing something different to be able to get the result that you're looking for. Um, I guess I have another. We have another question here from our audience. It says, and maybe this is more for me and you, Anthony. Although I guess Bobby, you can chime in if you know from a clinician's perspective, if you see some things that you'd like to highlight. But it asks here, what physical accomplishments are you most proud of since your injury?
Great question.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple. I am very proud that I have been able to, stand up and walk with a walker a little bit. That was I was lucky, to be able to get some movement back. I know that's not something that everybody gets, and obviously it was a lot of hard work and a little bit of luck. But yeah, definitely once I kind of started to get a little movement back in my legs, being able to work really hard and to be able to stand up and walk, that's been huge. That was a big personal accomplishment. It's been great for independence and, like we were just saying, just controlling everything in my health. And another one that I've been working on for a very long time that Bobby can attest to is floor transfers, like getting off the floor onto a couch or my bed or PT table. Still working on the chair to wheelchair or floor to wheelchair. That one's a little bit harder, but just being able to get off the floor in general. I just started to be able to do that in probably the last like 2 months, and that was a big one that I was really working hard on.
Yeah, I think, for me, like the things that I'm proud of, I kind of I don't know. I guess maybe it's the way my brain works, but I always think more about the things that I'm struggling to try to achieve. I pretty much, I pretty quickly forget the successes once they happen and am focused on the next thing that I'm trying to get to. And so it's definitely, depending on when you asked me when I was injured, the answer is very different. I remember when I first was hurt and laying in a hospital bed and, even lying down, couldn't like get an arm up to my face without hitting myself in the head. And it was like I was really happy when I could sit up and brush my teeth. Um, and then a big goal of mine for years after that was to be able to independently transfer in and out of my rugby chair. And then I accomplished that. And so I think in some senses, like I feel like having a short memory has helped me not to dwell on the accomplishments, but keep pushing towards new things. I don't know, Bobby, if you've seen anything from different, from all the different people that you've worked with, if there's certain accomplishments that are really important to people, or if maybe people have a mindset like me where they're just kind of moving on to the next thing and not dwelling on the accomplishment or what.
I think it definitely depends on the personality and everything from that nature. Definitely, I would say no accomplishments too small though after injury. I mean, it could be something super simple that people take for granted, but it was their first time doing it, and that's a huge deal for that individual after injury.
I think that's a good point. And we're not all, I mean, we may all be folks who are living with spinal cord injuries, but that's kind of where a lot of similarities end between people based on, what our goals are, what's important to us, um, and that sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I think we're kind of at we've kind of exhausted our list of questions here. I guess before we wrap things up, do either of you guys have anything maybe that we didn't hit on or anything else that you want to add before we say goodbye to everyone?
I was gonna say for Anthony, because I haven't talked to you for a little bit. What was the hardest thing that you didn't account for when you moved in by yourself? Because obviously you talked about the
Um,
fitted sheet and the floor tramp, but like, what was something that like surprised you?
Honestly, something that surprised me that's kind of a weird one is how heavy laundry can be and like trying to pick up the bin and like wheel over to my laundry machine and then like pull it out and put it up. It's a workout. Like afterwards I'll be like, feeling it in my arms a little bit. That is definitely like kind of a difficult one.
All right.
I think that's yeah, really really well put. Um, I'll say too, something that surprises me constantly too, even though I know it, is how much energy you expend just to get through the basic day, just doing kind of the things that anyone else would do, and like the energy and time that requires, and then you're trying to live and work and stuff like that on top of that, and there's a huge energy time commitment that still sometimes surprises me.
Absolutely.
Um, Well, all right, guys. I guess we're at the end of our Hope Talk today. I really want to thank both of you guys, Bobby and Anthony, for contributing your amazing insights. I want to thank everyone who's joined us and watched this for participating, and thank you for your questions. Hopefully, we were able to answer them and provide everyone with some good information. I do want to mention that the next Hope Talk in this series is why mental health matters. If you want to mark that down on your calendar, that Hope Talk will be July 28th at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll definitely have more information on that as that date gets closer. And then a big thank you once again to United Access for sponsoring the Hope Talk series. And we definitely look forward to seeing all of you at the next one. So thanks for joining us, everyone, and be safe and be happy and be active.